You are sitting at the kitchen table. The bills are open in front of you. You did the math 3 times already. You are still coming up short. You make more than you did 2 years ago. You spend less than you used to. And somehow, every single month, there is less money at the end than there should be. You're not irresponsible. You're not lazy. You're not doing anything wrong. And yet, the numbers don't add up. You close the laptop. You tell yourself it'll be better next month. It won't. And it's not just you. Your neighbor is doing the same math. Your coworker is doing the same math. Your parents did the same math for 30 years and never figured out why it never balanced. They did everything they were supposed to do. They worked hard. They saved what they could. They trusted the system. And the system smiled back at them and quietly took 30% of everything they built. Not in one moment, not in one bill, in a slow, invisible, perfectly legal process that has a name most people never learn. A process that is happening to you, right now, at the kitchen table while you do the math a fourth time, because nobody told you about the chief. Imagine a village. In this village, everyone works. The farmers grow food, the builders make houses, the hunters bring meat, and every week they trade what they have for what they need. Simple, fair, it works. Now imagine the village gets a chief. The chief doesn't farm, doesn't build, doesn't hunt, but the chief has big ideas. He wants to throw giant parties, build giant walls, fight the village next door. All of that costs a lot of meat, and the chief doesn't want to hunt. So he invents something brilliant. He gathers the whole village and holds up a leaf. From now on, he says, this leaf is worth one piece of meat. The hunters look at each other. Just a leaf? Trust me, says the chief. And because he's the chief, they trust him. At first, it works perfectly. The chief pays for everything with leaves. The hunters get leaves. The builders get leaves. The farmers get leaves. Everyone is busy. Everyone is paid. The village has never felt so prosperous. People are happy. The chief is popular. The parties are spectacular. But then the chief gets a taste for it. More parties, more walls, more wars, more leaves. He starts printing them faster than the village can hunt meat. Soon there are 1,000 leaves in circulation, but the same amount of actual meat. And then one morning, a hunter goes to buy a rabbit. The price? Not one leaf anymore. 40 leaves. He stares at the pile in his hand. He did the same work, hunted the same rabbit, got paid the same leaves, but somehow he's poorer. He goes home, opens his little wooden box of savings, does the math 3 times, still coming up short. Sound familiar? That feeling has a name. Economists call it inflation, but in plain language, the chief printed too many leaves, and your hard work bought less every single year without anyone ever telling you it was happening. You weren't bad with money. You were holding the wrong thing. Now here's where it gets interesting. The villagers eventually notice. They get angry. They start asking questions. The hunters gather around the fire. The builders stop building for a day. The farmers put down their tools. Everyone wants answers. So the chief does something clever. He walks to the center of the village, picks up a stick, and draws a line in the dirt. I promise, he says, raising his hand solemnly, I will never print more leaves past this line. He calls it the leaf ceiling. The villagers feel better. Order has been restored. The chief is responsible now. The hunters go back to hunting. The builders go back to building. The farmers go back to farming. Everything is fine, except a few months later, the chief runs out of leaves again. He needs more parties, more walls, more wars. He walks back to the center of the village. He looks at the line in the dirt. He looks around. No one is watching. He picks up the stick. He erases the line. He draws a new one, further away, and keeps printing. He has done this 14 times. 14 times he drew the line. 14 times he erased it. 14 times the villagers debated, argued, pointed fingers at each other, and then forgot about it when the next crisis came along. The line is not a limit. The line is a prop. And every time the chief erases it and draws a new one, every single time, the hunters go home and do the math and come up short. Congratulations. You now understand the United States debt ceiling. Now here's the math, because math is the only thing that doesn't lie. 10 years ago, you saved 1,000 leaves. You were responsible. You did everything right. But while you were saving, the chief printed so many new leaves that yours quietly lost 30% of their value. Your pile still says 1,000, but it can only buy 700 leaves worth of meat. 300 leaves of your work gone. Not stolen in one dramatic moment, not taken in one big tax bill, just quietly dissolved every single year while you were busy trusting the chief. And here's what makes it so elegant. From his perspective, you can't see it happening. There's no moment where someone reaches into your pocket. There's no line on your pay stub that says taken for the Chiefs parties. There's no bill in the mail. There's no announcement. There's no apology. You just wake up one day and notice that the same groceries cost more, the same rent cost more. The car you used to be able to afford, you can no longer afford, and you assume it's your fault. You assume you're not working hard enough. You assume you're not saving enough. You assume everyone else has figured out something you haven't. They haven't. You go back to the kitchen table. You do the math one more time, still coming up short. Now here's the part no one explains in the village square. Some people figured out the game early. They stopped holding leaves. They started holding things the chief could never print. Land, gold, pieces of real companies. Things with actual, limited supply. Things that go up in value when the chief prints more leaves. Because when there are more leaves chasing the same amount of meat, the meat gets more valuable. Not the leaves. These people didn't work harder. They didn't get a second job or stumble onto a lucky opportunity. They didn't find a secret. They didn't have a connection. They didn't inherit anything special. They just understood one simple rule. Don't hold the thing they can print forever. Hold the thing they can't. And here's the part that will bother you for a few days after this video. The information was always available. It wasn't hidden in a vault. It wasn't locked behind a paywall. It wasn't classified. It was just never taught in school. Never explained on the news, never mentioned at the kitchen table, while your parents did the math and came up short, because a population that understands this rule is a population that stops holding leaves, and the chief needs someone to hold the leaves. Let's run the 5 years, not motivationally, mathematically, because that's the only language the chief system actually respects. Year 1, you stop hoarding leaves, you trade a piece of them for a share of the village's best farm. People call you strange. Some of them tell you leaves are safe, leaves are stable, leaves are what responsible villagers hold. You feel it, the discomfort of stepping off the path everyone else is on. Sit with it, because here's what's also happening in year 1. The chief prints another round of leaves, prices go up, your share of the farm goes up with them. Quietly, without applause. Year 2, the habit builds. You stop watching the chief's announcements. You stop panicking every time he erases the line. The line was never real anyway. You just keep going. The neighbors are still debating, still arguing about which chief is better, still waiting for someone to fix the line for good. You stopped waiting. Year 3, the price of everything jumps again. Your neighbors are angry at the market, complaining in the break room, blaming the chief before him or the one before that. You check your portfolio. It kept up. You feel something unfamiliar. It's not fear, it's not anger, it's clarity. Year 4, the chief announces a new ceiling, the biggest one yet. Everyone in the village debates it for weeks. The news runs the story for a month straight. You don't participate. You already moved your leaves into things that debate can't touch. You read about it the way you'd read about the weather in a city you don't live in anymore. Year 5, you look at what you built. It's not a fortune. We're not going to pretend it is, but it's real. It's yours. No one voted on it. No chief on earth can announce it's worth less tomorrow. And it's compounding, silently, mechanically, without requiring you to trust a single promise drawn in the dirt. The villagers who laughed at you in year 1, they're still counting their leaves, still waiting for the next chief to finally draw the line and mean it. Still watching the dirt, hoping this time the promise holds. Still doing the math at the kitchen table. Still coming up short. The chief will never stop printing. Not because he's evil, because the system requires it. Every debt needs new leaves to pay the interest on the old leaves. Which means they need to print more leaves to cover the new debt, which creates more interest, which requires more leaves. It's not a conspiracy. It's just math. And you were never supposed to understand it. You were supposed to keep doing the math at the kitchen table, assuming the problem was yours, trusting that the line in the dirt meant something, holding the leaves until they were worth nothing. You weren't taught to save. You were taught to hold the bag. You don't have to move to another village. You don't have to fight the chief. You don't have to understand every detail of monetary policy or read a textbook about macroeconomics. You just have to understand the game well enough to stop being the one holding leaves when the music stops, because the most powerful thing you can do isn't to protest the leaf printer. It's to own something the leaf printer can never touch. That's not radical. That's not complicated. That's not even that hard. That's just how the game actually works. And now you know. If this video made the chief uncomfortable, good? Offlicit. The game was rigged. We drew the map.